Yeah, any debts? Any debts or anything this week? Don't forget Tyree. Any deaths or things to acknowledge before silent meditation? There's a rest list.
Yeah, I cut out. My wife doesn't like it. Yeah, different. Thank you.
No, so what I wanted to explain is 70% of the community is not it's an organization that
Before we start recording, I want to let everyone know that Mo has gas. That's nobody's sitting by.
Am I on it?
All right. Is she good? Y'all good?
We're good. Roll call for the City Council meeting of Wednesday, February 1st, 2023 at 9 a.m. Mr. Nelson, Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon is absent.
Pledge, is that the first?
Huh?
Pledge first, or do we?
Yeah,
do
we
silent
didn't do
meditation?
I thought you were going to say what you were going to say first.
Hey, just some people to acknowledge before silent meditation. We've got just as the nation, as the broader community mourns Tyree Nichols. You know, there's always a lot of trauma in the community with those public instances. Always challenges with public trust. So we want to acknowledge that today. And we had a couple notable community members that passed away in the last 2 weeks. We had John Box, who I just complimented a hat of Jasmine's, and she was, and now we can't get those hats anymore. He was a big impact in our community, and a lot of people enjoyed him. And then Jack Tufts, a coach, golf coach, J.C. Martin, a guy that you have something?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Also, Mr. Sennett. Attorney Sennett passed away.
Oh.
Will Sennett,
Yeah,
the elder.
all right.
What a great guy.
So, with that.
Moment of silence, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today, first of all, grateful and thankful that you have allowed us to assemble in these chambers today. By the power of your Spirit, help us make good and prudent decisions on the behalf of the residents of the city of Erie. Lord, we ask that you visit and comfort all those who are in mourning right now, that you put a special blessing upon the families of the bereaved, that you also look at our country, Lord, and that you help us come together and mend fences. And so we just ask this in your name. Amen.
The Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a public hearing right at 9:30, so we're going to get a couple things started, but they may need to be, we may need to take a break from them for a moment. So at this time, do we have any? Sorry,
We
go
have
ahead.
a motion
Approval
to
minutes.
accept the minutes from the January 18th, 2023 City Council meeting and bills for payment on February 3rd and 10th. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Nelson. Sorry.
Do we have any repository sales? Do we have any repository sales? Do we have any repository sales? All right, moving on to public comments. We've got a couple people that were opening those up. We've got Kathy Weiser, we've got Gary and Sharon Lackey, and we've got Mike Vitelli to open things scheduled. Are they here? Yeah. Come on forward and offer your public comments.
I actually would like to yield my time. We had to give names so that we could get onto the agenda, but our president of our association, Dave Pianta, is here, so I would like him to speak in my place.
Sure. And I, just to be clear with everyone on the biking and neighborhood, we are planning to schedule, the planning and public works is planning to have a meeting with you next week so that we could have a better dialogue. You know, we can't respond to you, so we'll hear your comments.
Right, we understand that.
Okay. Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
Dear City Council members, my name is David Pianta, and I'm the current president of the Green Garden Boulevard Association, a position I've held since 2005. I've lived at 3403 Green Garden since 1999, so almost 24 years by now. I love living in Green Garden. I love the busyness of it. I love watching the people walk their dogs, the joggers, the cars racing up and down Green Garden. I love the bikers. I mean, I just love where we're at. I love watching it, all this activity with my wife as we sit on our porch. I love the trees. I love, mowing my lawn and having people drive by and beep and wave, and never can tell who it is, but you just kind of wave back, but it's just kind of cool. I love Green Garden Boulevard just the way it is. I do want Erie to be more, I think all of us do, want Erie to be more progressive, healthier, let's say even. And a bikeway project is a good idea to some extent, but our association does not feel that one of these paths should be on Green Garden. And our main concerns, and I'm going to label these concerns 1A, 1B, and 1C. So 1A would be emergency and delivery vehicle access once these white poles are constructed, dividing the bikeway from the streets. Whether it's these vehicles pulling over or fire trucks coming up the road. I mean, Green Garden is a main, street for fire trucks. 1B is the elimination of on-street parking. I live on the corner of 34th and Green Garden, so personally, this one doesn't affect me. Anyone who's visiting my house will park on 34th Street. But, there's 95 houses on Green Garden, of which this affects 80 of them, at least. So it's a major concern for a lot of my neighbors. Third, or 1C, is safety. I mentioned cars racing up and down Green Garden. Green Garden is a busy street, fast-moving traffic a lot of the time. That's Green Garden itself. Even the crossroads, 28th, 30th, 32nd, 34th, 36th, cars going from east to west, they're jetting across Green Garden to get to the other side. It's a busy street, and this is personally my main concern. I think, just one, people backing out of their driveways, again, 95 houses. I just think one fatality in this project is a fail. So with that said, I'll let some of our association members have their say, and thank you for your time and all you do for the city.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Lackey. I live on 2709 Green Garden Boulevard. And I was just trying to wrap my head around the bike plan selection of Green Garden, piggybacking on what Dave was saying. I was reading some of the active area plan. It looks like it got adopted in 2021. And some of it speaks of a public accountability being essential to the success of the plan. And we appreciate getting the survey. I think it was just last weekend, maybe, and we filled out and sent in some input. But the plan also speaks about several, I don't know, it just sounds like recommendations. So I guess my concern was who's in charge? Who's the city action team, or who is actually running or overseeing this plan? And I didn't find an answer there, so I was hoping maybe we'll find an answer to see who's running it so we could input that. Because it looks like there were 4 other routes: Cascade, East Ave, Downing, and Bird as north-south. Even Pittsburgh Ave is in here, as Pittsburgh is considered a higher risk, like the north part from 26th to the Bayfront on Green Garden. It's considered high risk up there, and I don't see how, if I'm a biker and I like to bike, but I would never go past 26th and Green Garden and feel safe, and I don't see how that could be changed. But it looks like Pittsburgh Ave could be changed to a low risk, and so could Cascade. I was driving up on the way here and saw Cascade. It looks like a pretty quiet street, and it goes right from 38th all the way up. So I was just curious about the safety of biking in Erie on the selection of Green Garden. And when it turns into Green Garden Road, it's just, I would never go that way. So that's my concern.
Thank you.
Morning, Council. I'm David St. George. I live at 2727 Green Garden. Green Garden Boulevard is a tale of 2 streets. It's a beautiful street, but it's also a very busy street. The residents were extremely disappointed that we were left completely out of the project for years while it was worked on by Active Erie Erie Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the city engineers. We are against implementing an unsafe plan, and we are also against being overly inconvenienced by a lack of on-street parking. In a letter to residents on January 18th, the city said that it is in the final design phase for the bikeway. There was zero input from Green Garden residents until today. The design has been completed except for residential surveys. What approvals have been made? City Council in February 2021 approved the initial plan. The details of the plan for Green Garden said convert shoulders to bike lanes, add striping. That's it. There was no mention of on-street parking removal, no mention of the impact to emergency vehicle routes, and no mention of poles along the bikeway. The plan today is not what was approved in 2021. Significant changes have been made, and City Council members and the steering committee, including fire and police, need to review and approve the final design when it is 100% completed. Green Garden is a busy street. On January 27th, I counted 192 vehicles between 7:30 and 8 a.m. That's 9.4 seconds between cars going from at the end of my driveway north from 26. This plan would add a bike lane at the end of my driveway. Also, the bike riders will have a long line of cars as a background behind them from my viewpoint, and it'll be hard to distinguish. I'm concerned about having two of my children, who are teenage drivers, back up in this scenario.
Thank you.
Others are concerned about friends, family, and elderly visitors doing this too. Fire crews have split seconds responding by Fire crews save split seconds by responding to fires leaving their vehicle doors open at the firehouse. They are highly trained and every second matters. I recently found out fires double every 30 seconds. On Green Garden, the bikeway plan calls for putting 4-foot poles every 16 to 32 feet to separate the planned bikeway from the traffic lane. The city engineer said that he expects traffic in front of an emergency vehicle to pull into the bike lane in between the poles and let emergency vehicles through. Is this even safe with bike riders in the bike lane? Will a bus fit between the poles? I can see some drivers being confused in this situation. It will add seconds or even minutes as crews drive 12 blocks of the proposed bikeway to figure out drive 12 blocks of the proposed bikeway as drivers try and figure out how to pull over. Without on-street parking, where delivery trucks, service trucks, utility trucks, and others supposed to park in our driveways, some will be too big, and large trucks will have poor visibility to the rear, and they'll have to back up over the bikeway and into a busy street. Also, where are visitors to our house supposed to park during a large get-together? Blocks away. I want to remind everyone the purpose of a bike lane is to separate the cars from the bikes for safety. In this plan, during an emergency on Green Garden, the cars are supposed to funnel into the bike lane. The active Erie plan defeats its own purpose by putting cars and bikes in the same place at the same time. The residents that call Green Garden home have been left out of this bikeway project for years, and all have paid thousands of dollars in taxes, and most have lived there for decades, keeping it beautiful. This final design of the bikeway project is not well thought out, it is not safe, and it will inconvenience the people that call Green Garden Boulevard home. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul DeRamo. I live at 3304 Green Garden. I've been a homeowner and taxpayer for many, many years. I've been there since the late 90s. 2 points I'd like to make about this project. One is safety, and for whatever reason, Green Garden is a major artery for our first response emergency vehicles. It always has been. The reason for that, because it has direct access to major points of the city. 38th Street, Peach Street, over to Zook, up to Interchange Road to 79. It is imperative that our emergency vehicles get to the emergency and handle the emergency. We see fire trucks, ambulance, our city police using it, EMTA buses use it all the time. It is what it's designed to do, and it works well. I agree with Dave, who said that time is the essence in getting to an emergency. We would hate to have a secondary emergency trying to get to the initial emergency. And I just feel that, we talk about being able to service the community. As a taxpayer, on-street parking is very, very critical. I have family and friends that come over and they park out there. We have Mount Calvary Church on 32nd and Green Garden. They, every Sunday, on weekends, major holidays, they're parked on the street. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what is part of our community. And the businesses we have on Green Garden would be affected by it. Consumer deliveries, UPS, FedEx, all the same way. That is important. When I have my family come in from Atlanta, I want them to be able to park. I want them to celebrate the holidays that we have there. And to me, those are the two major points. People always say location, location, location. And I agree. This is not the best location. I think there is better locations, absolutely. Am I aware of bikers? I ride our bikes as well. But again, I want to thank you for your time and consider all that was said. Thank you.
We'll only have time for 2 more, just to give a heads up before the public hearing.
Dear council members, thanks for hearing our concerns today. My name is Jonathan Rural, 2918 Green Garden, been a resident there for 21 years plus. Just augmenting some of what they were saying as well. Safety is, of course, the main concern overall. Thinking of the scope of this, for one that lives on Green Garden, my wife and I have seen several incidents where people have just blown off the stop signs and whipped through because Green Garden they know is an access point. Well, the existing plan, in my understanding of how it is, will not only cut off the lane to a degree, but it'll cut off our turning lanes, making Green Garden more of a choke point. Looking at the entire package of this, not only is it going to slow down traffic in general on Green Garden, it's also going to cut down the ability of other cars to get out of the way, again, for those emergency vehicles. So that is a big concern. The other thing, for the amount of incidents that we have personally witnessed where cars have gone into my neighbor's yard because they can't make the turn. If they do not see someone there, it's an afterthought. When you go and consider how many accidents are there, we have all these beautiful trees. Now, the trees make a canopy which makes Green Garden part of a unique culture. There are certain areas like it, of course, but this one has been there for 60 plus years. To be able to see people on a secondary bike path instead of augmenting the sidewalk somehow, some way, I'm tempted to cut down my trees, and replant them so I can see around giant sycamores that are constantly in the way where we're maybe not seeing someone fly down on their bike. If we have to do that sort of thing to make it safer, it will forever change what Green Garden is. Thank you for your concerns.
My name is Freda Teffer, live at 1738 West 23rd Street in Erie. First of all, on this day of Tyree Nichols' funeral, I do want to say that if there are any textual, I believe that's the word, traffic stops regularly occurring in the city of Erie, they need to stop. Erie needs to put some of its ARPA money or some of its crime prevention money into technology to capture license plate numbers and mail tickets. People should not be stopped for taillights or failure to change lanes or air fresheners in the window or whatever, they should get a ticket in the mail. End of that. I live in the Green Garden area. I live in the Baldwin Park neighborhood. And to my friends on the other side of West 26th Street, during the Active Erie Plan, after the Active Erie Plan, at 4 MPO meetings, at numerous city council meetings, and in comment to the long-range plan of the MPO and the TIP and other things, I have over and over again stressed that there needs to be public involvement for this project. People in the city need to be aware when these little informal plans happen, these little processes. The city thinks that's public involvement, and then they're going to go ahead and do a design. We have yet to be involved in the Baldwin Park neighborhood in how the parking is going to happen. There has not yet been a meeting with the city. People need to know that. The Active Erie Steering Committee was all people from agencies, one pedestrian who doesn't, from the Disability Roundtable who doesn't live in the city, and a couple of Bike Erie people. That's not public involvement. So process is important here. When I was told by somebody in engineering, these are just plans, they're just on paper. I'm sorry, but if I was paying an architect, I wouldn't go to that trouble until I darn well knew what I was doing. And this is taxpayer money. If they're that cavalier with taxpayer money, I'm very upset about that. So we need public involvement earlier. This was a categorical exclusion with this project. And even categorical exclusions should have public involvement in developing the criteria and the evaluation criteria for project and the weights of the different criteria. None of that happened. So some specific concerns. Snow. How are they going to handle snow removal? I don't know about you, but in my neighborhood, they just go racing through there, and all the snow gets thrown onto the green strip or the sidewalk, and both in the case of my block. How are they going to handle sidewalk with all those delineators and things there? I'm concerned about visually impaired pedestrians. When you put that kind of protected bike lane there, it makes it harder for pedestrians to hear sound to help them decide when it is safe to cross. There needs to be an accessible pedestrian signal at West 32nd, one of the most dangerous left turns in the area because of the visibility, but there needs to be an accessible pedestrian signal there. There should be an accessible pedestrian signal at 18th and 21st on French Street. Also, the bike lane should go all the way to Frontier Park. Why the heck are you stopping at it? I'm sorry, money, that's no reason to not go all the way to Frontier Park where there needs to be a three-way stop sign. That's also a very dangerous part. And when you're doing that, you also need to finish the sidewalk in the block between 12th and the Bayfront Parkway on the east side of Green Garden. Currently, on Green Garden, there's no actual sidewalk at the numerous railroad crossings. There needs to be both sidewalk and pavement. But if you're going to do work there to make it equal for people who walk as well as bike, there needs to be sidewalk at the railroad crossings. By the way, for the French Street one, I'm not in favor of the Bayfront Parkway and I'm not in favor of the overpass, but how are people going to get to the overpass? They have to get to 2nd and Holland. Are you just going to ceremoniously leave them at 6th and French and say, good luck, you can get there? How are they going to get there? Is there going to be a three-way stop, four-way stop at Holland and 2nd so people can get, that's the only way they can get onto that overpass? Thank you.
Thanks. Public comments will continue after the hearing. Sorry, I gave a two-person warning.
Mr. President, if I can just one thing. We were told in caucus that there's going to be a public meeting for the folks in Green Garden, and they said it was going to be next week, and they said they would come to you. Would it be better for you to come here, or do you have to rent the Saga Club? I don't know that for a fact, but I don't know how they're going to come to you or where it's going to be. If it's here, then let us know after the meeting, and we'll move
The
forward
public.
with that.
Yeah, not just one neighborhood, everybody.
Yeah.
So, talk about it and give us feedback. You like it here? All right, that's pretty much unanimous. We'll work on that, Mr. President?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we've got 2 hearings today before we continue public comments. The first hearing is for waterfront conditional use at 215 Cherry. So that hearing will begin, and we'll have to swear in those that are giving testimony. Who's here for the hearing at 215 Cherry?
We have some.
Just the one person on Zoom? Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me okay?
Can we get that volume up a little bit?
I'm laughing because my name is Gerald Kononchik, so I'm here for the hearing, but I am here to answer questions, so we had somebody on site. My son Austin's going to be conducting the meeting. He's the applicant and has done the work and spent the money to get to this point. I just want you to know that I'm here in case there are any questions. I don't know if he's having a technical difficulty or you haven't released him yet, but he's that guy there.
Okay. Do you swear him in? Is that? All right. There we go. Yeah.
Anybody testify?
Oh, and Zoom.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
I do.
I do.
All right. What would you like to say about the project? Austin?
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me?
They can, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Yeah, apologies. So my name's Austin Kononchik. Gerald Kononchik, my father, is standing in front of you. I'm here to briefly go over my proposal for waterfront conditional use for 215 Cherry Street. I'm hoping you had a chance to review my proposal. Just a few highlights I'd like to go over. If you could actually turn to page 14 if you have the proposal in front of you. 215 Cherry Street, this is the current state of the property. It's remained vacant for around 7 years now. It's a single-family dwelling, and I am proposing to keep it as a single-family dwelling. I currently own the property. We have done extensive work thus far, such as hiring Michael Grab, the architect, to conduct some interior and exterior renderings. We've had a structural engineer come to assess the foundation of the property, as well as we've also contacted a tree removal service to clean up the plot. If some of you driven by the property, it was a little bit of a mess, but we have made significant progress in terms of cleaning up the plot. And then just kind of switching over to my proposal, which I think is a good rendering of what we want to do here. We want to keep the structure pretty much the same, besides 2 key additions, one of which is adding an attached 2-car garage to the property, as well as adding a 3rd story. And the reason for adding the 3rd story is hopefully, when we get some of those trees out of the way, we'll have a pretty nice view of the bay there. So yeah, that's kind of just a high-level overview. This property is a little bit of an eyesore in the area. It's remained vacant for around 7 years, like I said, and it would be essentially a full gut rehab. So pretty extensive project. We're assuming this will probably take a decent amount of time and money and effort to get this completed. So I'm just hoping that we can get this conditional use application approved so we can make Erie in this area, a nicer place to live. If you have any questions, you can definitely direct them, questions, comments, concerns to myself or, Gary, who's there in person.
How long have you owned the property?
I actually purchased this property in December 20th of 2022.
Again, I'm just here to answer questions. It's my son's project. He's resides in New York City today, and my wife and I will do anything possible to make this happen, to make his transition back home a reality. And so he told the story well. He's going to gut a 215 Cherry project. We've owned it prior to that, and he's taking it over.
What's the intent once the project's complete? Is it rental property, owner occupancy?
It will be owner occupied. Like I said, I currently live and work in New York City. I do plan on coming home and living in Erie eventually. Time frame kind of TBD, but we're predicting that this project will take several years to complete, and then when it's completed, that'll be my primary residence.
Owner occupancy, it'll be done to that level of quality and completeness.
Any other questions? It's on my dog walking route. That's how I get to the park to go see the beautiful view of the bay, and I live at 9th and Cherry, so please do a nice job. I love seeing nice houses on my walks. Appreciate you coming in today.
Those are rendering a part of the package, both the Design Review Committee and the Planning Commission. Design Review Committee is very thorough with colors, textures, materials, where the bushes are going to be, but if you looked at the picture, that's the goal.
The best part of it is that we're bringing in a young man back to the city.
You got it. Thank you.
We're just happy to have you relocating back to our city, and we look forward to having you as part of our community.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
All right, good day.
How's that conclude?
Thank you very much.
Do I hit a gavel or yet? Oh.
Is there anyone else that wishes to offer testimony in this hearing?
Freda Tepfer, 1738 West 23rd Street, Erie.
Oh, Ms. Tepfer,
Let's get you
sworn in.
I affirm.
Well, if you would raise your right hand.
I affirm. I just think that there needs to be what would be the equivalent of not an environmental impact statement, but what is the plan for this stretch of the bayfront? We're piecemealing it, a house, an apartment. And I can see from down below some of the horrendous things that are going up there and how they impact my view from the water and the people in the neighborhood and how they view the waterfront. What is the whole plan? Has anybody ever looked at the whole plan for this block along here? This front, is it going to be just a solid wall of 3-story houses and condos? These don't have to be approved. This is a conditional use permit. I'm saying that there ought to be a plan for the whole area rather than just piecemealing it. What is the cumulative effect of all of these different approvals that each one looks maybe harmless, maybe not harmless, but are you evaluating that? And will the trees that are being taken down be replaced? Thank you.
Any other public comment? Testimony, sorry. That'll conclude the public hearing. On to the next public hearing. We've got a public hearing for a request for a historic designation for the Mayor PACA building at 1501 to 1509 State Street and amend the zoning ordinance and map. Anyone offering public testimony on that, please come forward. Any of you, so we can swear you in. Anyone else being sworn in?
Mark.
All right.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Swear. Hello, my name is Chris Kinder. I'm the Historic Preservation Planner for the City of Erie, and the designation of the Mayor Building, or also known as PACA, is the first in the city's history. This kind of is the culmination or the start of the culmination of several years' work to develop a historic preservation program for the City of Erie. Several months ago, Mark Tannenbaum, along with the board of PACA, submitted an application to become locally historically designated. This is different from being listed on the National Register, which is largely honorary. The city's designation comes with some caveats and some programs that the building will become eligible for, and other buildings as we develop this program. In the packet that you may have seen, the board of PACA approved this unanimously, and we've had quite a bit of support to see this building designated as a local historic landmark. With us today is Mark Tannenbaum, the director, and he will kind of talk about why he thinks this building is significant and why he would like to see it designated.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Basically, I'll just answer questions if you want to know anything about the PACA building. I mean, we're on the National Historic Register. That took about 2 years to get. There's a lot of oversight on a building if it's on the National Historic Register, things that you can and cannot do as far as the facade of the building and the interior of the building. We've been very scrupulous about maintaining all of that. Another fancy part about PACA is that we really use our building. It's not just some beautiful building that we sit on the side and everybody kind of just looks at. PACA's busy. We have stuff there every single day. We are an arts community. There are 45, at least, arts studios that are active in that building. We have not-for-profits that are in our building. We have individual organizations that are in our building, individual entrepreneurs in our building. So what happens to us affects the art community a great deal. PACA is a not-for-profit. We own the property, and we're here to stay. Our goal is to survive as long as we possibly can. 100 years, obviously the Philharmonic is our goal, and the Playhouse is our goal to survive and promote the community as much as we possibly can. Our doors are shot. I mean, this is a big part of what we have to do. The front doors of our building are just shot. You can't go to Lowe's and get another set. You can't go buy them even online. You can't get them shipped in. These things, in fact, to be historically accurate, will be handmade for us. This is not a cheap date. We are trying to do the very best we can. This is really just beyond our ability to pay for. When it's done, it'll be stunning. It'll be beautiful. PACA is the gateway to the downtown. We're right before the bridge. We're out of all the economic development zone, but we're the last. We're the other side of the tracks. We're literally the other side of the tracks. So this is an opportunity for us. But that whole stretch, all those 3 buildings on our block are all the original buildings. So there is not another block other than here on 5th Street that has all the original buildings on State Street at all. There's only one other block, and ours. So we could make that whole block a historic property, and we'd love to do that. So I did bring stuff if anybody wants, but if people just want to ask me questions. We've lost a lot of beautiful buildings in downtown Erie. We're trying to save one.
I just have a few questions, I guess. You acquired PACA when, Mark?
Well, the organization started about 12 years ago.
Okay, because I know that the work you've done has been phenomenal.
And then PACA was able to buy the building under the umbrella of our not-for-profit. I don't own PACA, the building.
Right. But your organization is a nonprofit. You guys do, in fact, pay your fair share in your property taxes. And
we actually pay 100% of our property taxes, and I believe we're one of the pretty rare ones that do. Yeah. And we tried to set that standard of doing that. I'm not so sure we can do it forever. Things have just gone up. I don't know what the process is, but we talked about that. I may come before you again. Right. We pay about $10,000 a year in taxes.
Thank you.
Is this going to limit your use? I know you've played around with some ideas on the rooftop and such. Is this? And I was excited about those ideas. So
We would have done that, except we were ineligible for the money. You know, we just don't have the funds to make it safe up on the roof. We were going to put a solar farm on the southern part of our building, so that would have paid for the northern part of our building and allowed us to put rooftop access and fence it all in and make it safe. And we just don't have that, you know, $2.3 million, and I'll be happy to put that together. I'll be happy to do that. I don't think it's going to reduce our access. Part of the expense of these doors is that we need a more electronic, safe way to get in and out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And this will, you can't put the kind of gear on the old doors, they won't hold it. And so we have a fob system and a keypad system that would allow somebody that was a studio on the 4th floor to get information that somebody's on the outside that wants to get let in, that they could go on their cell phones and just let them in and open the doors. Otherwise, we have to leave the doors open all the time, and that's not safe.
Mark.
And we don't keep the money, we're spending the money. So the money goes right back to the community, and we hire 100% local.
How you doing, Mark?
Good, Mr. Troop.
Just real briefly, if you could, if you closed PACA's doors today,
yes,
what would happen in Erie, you think? What would it be?
If PACA shut
If
down?
you decided, hey, I'm done, and that's it.
Defaulted on our loan? I would hate to see that happen. Unfortunately, it would mean that the people, I mean, Clay Space, the city gallery, you know, there's so much that goes on, and they teach classes, they've got kids coming in there, there's so much that goes on in that building, they would have to go. I mean, I don't know how you would manage it. There's a lot of people in that building. No one lives in the building, it's not a housing location, it's a business location. But they're all entrepreneurs, and they're all actively involved in the community, so not only would they have to go home, I don't know where they would go, I think they would stop doing what they're doing. I don't know how they could do it. You can't recreate that stuff. I hope that doesn't happen. We're going to do our best to make sure that doesn't happen.
Just trying to, you know.
I feel you. But it does take, it actually is a zoning change. And that's really why I'm here, because city council is required to do a zoning change. And we're prepared to do this, and we're prepared to help other people do the same exact thing so that they could get their property zoned. I'm a great resource person for that. I'd be happy to be a resource person. They can call me on the phone. I'll go meet them. I'm on the committee. I've already gone out to the community and tried to have these meetings with people to convince them that saving property and buildings is good for the community at large. At one point, Erie had more beautiful turn-of-the-century buildings than you can shake a stick at, and had we not torn those down, which we pretty much did, Erie would have been a museum of historic turn-of-the-century real estate, and people would have flocked to the city just to see it. We have very few left. We hope to save this one.
I'm excited that a historic designation leads to key fobs on doors and being able to open them with your cell phone. That's the kind of historic preservation that I can really...
Well, you have to merge that, and that's one of the trickiest parts of historic preservation, is to bring it up to modern code, which is very hard to do because it's just not built that way. And, you know, making staircases that are wide enough, and we're doing all that. It's elevator shafts and key fob doors. We're doing everything we can. That's why people tear this stuff down.
Yeah, I was gonna state, like, I remember you stating to me that you were trying to be as ADA compliant as possible, and one of the first big updates you were doing was working on the elevator.
Yes.
And giving people who didn't have the ability to climb the stairs access as soon as possible. So that really made me understand that you have created a place for artists and people to gather and organize and be able to enjoy the arts, because there isn't really many places for that. So I applaud your efforts.
Thanks. And we would put a new elevator in. A brand new elevator and a brand new elevator shaft in a 5-story building is $500,000. And we would love to spend that money. We'd be glad to do it.
Mr. President, Mark, I think it's important that the folks out in the city know that you're paying your taxes. They don't understand the historic designation.
Right.
They think this is a way to dodge taxes. Furthest thing from the truth. And I applaud you also. You're doing a great job.
I think we've owned the building now for 7 or 8 years. And we have paid every single year.
Right.
So it's like $80,000, $1,000 to the community.
Thank you.
But
Anyone
I have
else?
stuff if
Yeah.
you want stuff.
Yeah. Like to see it.
Yeah, come on up.
Come on up.
It'll be different than what this looks like because this was just a door that I found. But we're going to have them handmade for us. We're going to have a craftsman craft them out of raw wood and start from scratch. So they'll be better than what we have. More artistic and more historically accurate.
All right.
The doors that are on there now are not the original doors to the building in 1899. They're from the 1930s, but they're shot. Okay, they're just done.
All right. Well, we'll ask the other people for testimony.
Sorry.
You'll have to be sworn in again, Freda.
Hi,
It's in the
right.
hearing.
This is Freda Teffer, 1738 West 23rd. As Mark can tell you, I go to
Sworn-
nearly.
Do we have to swear
I did
in
already.
again?
I did at the last hearing.
But it was 2 hearings.
Bear with me. Is anyone else going to be offering testimony in this? So if you just raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I affirm. As Mark will tell you, Shelley Humphrey and I go to nearly every PACA performance, and I have a plaque on the stairs dedicated to Archie Mehitabel that I paid for. PACA is a very valuable resource. For some reason, it's not considered one of the key assets, and it's not on the shuttle. It should be on the shuttle because parking is at a premium down there. It's really tricky to park if you're going to PACA, although I know some secret places now. But I support this historic designation. I support a more assertive preservation of some of the facilities in this town. Sadly, we lost the Greyhound terminal. Sadly, we lost the viaduct. Sadly, we've lost so many other beautiful buildings or important assets in the city, so I hope this is not the only case where we have such a designation. Thank you.
It's always reminds me of a dream where I'm talking and nobody can hear me, so bear with me here. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. I've been a fan of PACA. Oh, excuse me, nerves. I've been a fan of PACA for 10 years, and the gentleman over there asked, what would happen if PACA just finished? And I'd like to tell you a little bit about what would happen. First of all, we would lose one of the greatest community assets we have. PACA does Broadway plays in Erie. When you go there, you can't tell that you're not in New York City. It looks like a New York City theater. We're always talking about how wonderful a small town is. First of all, I don't think Erie is a small town. I grew up in Clarion. That's a small town, okay? Okay? But we need to have experiences of big cities. We need to bring art and culture to Erie. Mark Tannenbaum and the PACA crew bring that to us every week. They have, I'm not familiar with the other things they do, but I do know that the plays are extraordinary. And this is one of the 3 community theaters that always do a good job and are always reaching out to the community and always provide plays with social content. I would just hate to see PACA leave, and it's one of the top 10 reasons why I stay in Erie. Because I lost my #1 reason, which was my mechanic. So I'm glad PACA's here, and I hope you all consider it a valuable, beyond valuable asset, because we are losing arts. We are losing music in schools, and we need PACA to stand up and say, we're here, we can change you. Because as a person who was picked on in school a very long time ago, last millennia, I can say that the arts saved me. Theater saved me. Now, I wasn't an actor, and I applaud them, but having a venue like this is just brilliant. And I hope that you give Mark everything he asked for and his board, because I don't know many good men in my life, but Mark Tannenbaum is one of the best men that I know, and he is an advocate for the city. Thank you.
Could you state your name and address?
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes, Julie Minich, that's M-I-N-I-C-H, pronounced like Munich, Germany. And my address is 1027 West 37th Street. Thank you.
Anyone else here for public testimony? Come forward. You haven't gotten sworn in yet still, right?
Well, I've been trying not to say anything.
Raise your right hand.
I do. Belinda Meyer, 114 Carver Avenue. So I am here. I really have been trying not to say anything. But at the encouragement of others, so the designation of PACA as a local historic resource is a long time coming. As many of you know, probably 2 to 3 years ago now, the City of Erie, through both the administration and council, appointed a task force. The task force was the Historic Preservation Task Force, which was charged with looking at how historic preservation could be woven into the city's implementation of Erie Refocused and the kind of revitalizing of the downtown and the strengthening of its neighborhoods. And so the task force came up with a number of recommendations which were presented, one of which was to pursue certified local government designation. The Certified Local Government Program is actually a national program. This is a program of the National Park Service. It is administered at the state level by the State Historic Preservation Office. That's not unique to Pennsylvania. That's the structure that's used across the country. And so the Certified Local Government Program, it allows for technical assistance, so the State Historic Preservation Office can provide technical assistance for certified local government communities. They can provide resources around training. They can provide grant funding, which always makes people's eyes sparkle, right, when you're talking about grant funding. So the city did indeed apply for certified local government designation. And what was required as part of that was a strengthening of the historic preservation ordinance and the designation of at least one local historic resource. So with today's nomination, we are indeed meeting the very last criteria required for our certified local government designation. The city has already been benefiting from grant funding as well as training funding through the State Historic Preservation Office through their certified local government grant programs. But this will be the final piece to solidify that designation. And I did want to clarify a couple of things. I think often there's a misconception about what local designation means and what designation or listing on the National Register means. The National Register of Historic Places, and I'm sorry, I'm a historian by nature, so I geek out on this stuff, right? The history of preservation. The National Register of Historic Places was created in 1966, right? It's part of a national act that was created to establish the country's historic preservation programs. When the National Register was created, it very specifically was created to not require or put restrictions on private property owners. Now, you heard Mark mention that because he's on the National Register, he's had to adhere to some design guidelines. The reason he has is because he's used state funding, public funding, right? So that's why PACA as a National Register listed resource, has had to adhere to specific design guidelines because they've accepted public funding for some of their projects. The National Register of Historic Places for private property owners does not have enforced or regulated design guidelines. That regulation or enforcement of design guidelines comes at the local level. And frankly, that was one of the reasons why the certified local government designation was pursued. Because to Mark's other point, Erie has lost a number of historic resources over its time. And I think if you were to talk to residents, current residents, expatriates, when they talk about what they love in Erie, almost always the buildings will come up, right? They love their corner markets. They love their neighborhood parks. They love the schools that they went to. They love the churches that they grew up in. They love the social clubs where their families spent time, right? These are the buildings and the places that our community is connected to, and it's part of our identity. And so that's, again, in part, one of the reasons why historic preservation really matters for the community. I also wanted to note that when a property or historic district is designated locally through the city zoning, what's reviewed are changes. So nothing that has already been done to the building pre-designation. So if changes have been made prior to designation, there is not a retroactive review process, right? The other thing to note is that the Historic Review Commission and the Historic Preservation Planner are looking at changes to the facade only. We are not going to be looking at interior changes. And I think it's important to note too that what makes our historic buildings, in addition to contributing to the identity, another way in which they contribute to the community is by being active spaces. And to be active spaces that contribute to the economy of the city, they have to be used, which means, yes, there do need to be changes in our historic buildings, right? The role of the Historic Review Commission is really to look at how those changes can be made, and at the same time, the historic character and quality of the building can be preserved. And so I'm hoping that addressed some of the questions that may have come up through some of the other presentations, but I'm also open to addressing any additional questions if you may have them.
I couldn't imagine how much more brilliant you would have been if you prepared this. Excellent, excellent job.
Oh, thank you.
No?
Okay, I'm running off the stage. Thank you, thank you.
Would anyone else like sworn in for public testimony? All right. And with that, the hearing concludes. All right, moving back to public comments. Sorry to keep you waiting, Art. Left you standing for a while.
Hey, those are the breaks. I even gave my spot to Freda. So, what can I say? All the best for my friend, Mark Tannenbaum and PACA. City council members, administration, as we reflect today on the passing of Tyree Nichols, you should know that between the time he passed and now, 11 other civilians have been shot down by police activity. So it's not something that's going to go away unless we make changes. Now, it's been 2 years since myself and a group of others, concerned citizens, have approached the mayor and the administration about policing issues. We also talked about police use of force, force diversity, non-law enforcement policies and response, and also the formation of a civilian police review board. So I like to bring this up every so often The mayor had indicated that after his DEI consultant weighed in with a report, that there'd be some activity. There was a report given in November. We haven't seen an approved report from the mayor yet on this DEI consultant report. But it's a major concern for this city so that we can build trust in our police force and within our community. Also, I would like to draw your attention to Act 127. Back in 1985, there was an ordinance placed on the books having to deal with minority contractors and women-owned businesses and activity. And it was updated in 2006. And today, we continue to have it on the books, but it has not been implemented. You need to pay attention. I'm not sure that the administration is paying attention, but it's something that maybe council needs to re-examine. Either enforce it or strike it, bring it down. I think it was a good ordinance, needs some work, but it needs your attention. Also, I noticed in new business, number 1 on the agenda, there's some kind of a cooperation agreement with IRG. Now, several times, maybe a half a dozen, I've spoken before council regarding IRG. There are many, many questions about that business and the way it's going to operate. Before you enter into an agreement, you should know, you should be clear. You shouldn't enter into agreement till you understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, what the scope is, etc. So it's something to take a look at. I thank you for your time today.
Art, can you state your name and address, please?
Art Leopold, 5341 Apple Grove Lane, Erie, PA.
Good morning, Council.
Morning.
My name is Stephanie Seiner. I live at 633 East 7th Street, 16503. And I'm here this morning to thank you for approving Erie's Active Transportation Plan and to also voice my support for the bike lanes that are proposed for Green Garden and French Streets. I live and work in the city of Erie. My modes of transportation are bicycle and walking. I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car for many years. I've lived in other cities where bike lanes were the norm and where bikes, cars, and buses were able to share the public streets, where for the most part everyone obeyed traffic laws and were able to use the streets together to get where they need to go. Erie is the most dangerous place that I've ever traveled by bike. I've been in several incidences where I was hit by cars, car-doored. I was even hit by another bicycle, and we were both using the sidewalk at that time, which is not legal for either of us, but safer than the street. So when we're talking about traveling by bike in Erie, I'm not talking about peninsula recreation, but using the streets to travel to work and to where else I need to go. So I am really thrilled about the proposed bike lanes that Active Erie has been looking at. The Green Garden and French ones were approved 5 years ago in the long-range transportation plan. So people have been looking at those streets for a while. And I think that a lot of the outrage that's coming out about them is because of the lack of communication where residents aren't realizing what's happening with the parking and things like that. So talking to people would go a long way, I think, to avoiding the anger about it. The public comments are now open where people can voice their concerns, and I just want to say that I don't think the concerns are a reason to stop the progress towards the bike lanes. It's just a chance to take a final look at how they're going to be so that all travelers can use them. Bicycles using a dedicated lane moving with traffic is not going to overwhelm the street with cyclists, and instead it will make the street a safer, more orderly place for all moving vehicles to get where they need to go, which is the true purpose of our public roadways. Thank you.
Morning to everyone. My name is Eric Brozell. I'm at, my address is 1737 West 27th Street. And I'm here to support the whole active transportation initiative. And I was involved with that. I've been involved with it from the beginning. And I fully support the plan that we have in place to have a southerly route from the waterfront to 38th Street and beyond. I have been a lifelong bicyclist and am one of the founding members of Bike Erie. I ride my bike to errands, work, recreation, and entertainment. I also volunteer at a community bike shop to help others gain access to safe bicycles. The city's transportation system presently is broken. It's broken because the only reasonably safe and effective way to travel is with a car. Our bus service is limited, not everyone can afford to own a motor vehicle, and our streets aren't safe for those people not in a car. I would like everyone in the community, especially children, to be able to ride their bikes on the city streets safely. Presently, our streets are designed for cars and not people. In order to be a community that values all of its citizens, we need safe bicycle lanes. Look at cities around the tri-state area and you will see many bike lanes. Bike lanes are not a new concept and have been around for years. Anyone alive today has only known a world where cars come first. Across the world, cities are moving beyond that concept. Erie should be a part of that. For Erie to become a bicycle-friendly community, support will be needed from city officials to design streets for all people. Please support this important initiative. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for these opportunities to make public comment. My name is Adam Trott. I'm at 4642 Highview Boulevard. I have an exhibit to hand out. There's 6 of them here. My point here this morning is to provide context for the Green Garden bike lane proposal.
Thanks, Ed.
There's a concept that dates back to 2015 called the Erie Urban Bike Trail. And there was an event at the Erie Art Museum back in 2015 that was called Connect, Grassroots Efforts to Reshape Our Community. The Erie Urban Bike Trail was one of those components of that grassroots vision on transformative projects for Erie. Now, in the case of the Erie Urban Bike Trail, our first president of Bike Erie, Justin Smith, he actually established Bike Erie as a 501c3. And he also helped compile this vision of an Erie Urban Bike Trail. So essentially, it's a loop around the city that anyone can plug into to get to another part of the city. In the case of this specific route, the north and east legs are already existing with the Bayfront Highway Rec Trail. The southern leg, which is about 5 miles long, goes from McClelland and East 38th to Green Garden and West 38th. And then the west leg is the Green Garden bike lane. Of these legs, the north, east, and south are all PennDOT jurisdictions. The Green Garden portion is the only city jurisdictional portion of this bike trail. Now, I want to compliment the way the Erie Active Transportation Plan was engineered, because when you page through the plan, you will see cross sections of every bike lane proposed. And that's how these things are done. You study them in cross section. So they did that part well. Now, they had a citizens advisory committee for that project, but the residents of Green Garden are correct that they're kind of brought in after the idea is engineered, and that is a common problem in Erie, whether it's engineering or PennDOT, Freda brought it up. You're supposed to do investigations and field scoping before you establish your purpose and need statement. And it's commonly done here where they bypass that. Oftentimes they get a categorical exclusion in order to facilitate dismissing that part of the process. So the residents are right. However, we can catch up now with the public meeting that you're having. So to get into some specifics about the Green Garden portion of the Erie Urban Bike Trail, right now the pavement is about 21.5 feet wide on either side of a boulevard that's 20 or more feet wide. And the residents are right. It is one of the most gorgeous boulevarded roads in Erie because you never get a 20-foot wide boulevard. Right now, the way the cross-section is in this disputed portion is the bike lane, a buffer zone, and the car traffic. Now, I think Amanda's going to talk about the safety of cars parking alongside the road. But there is a 100-foot right-of-way on Green Garden. So there is capacity within this right-of-way to make everyone happy, and then it comes down to cost. So what happens often in Erie is, well, we get what we can afford now, and then we'll catch the rest of it later. Well, that's what happened to the Bayfront Highway. That's what happened to taking down the viaduct. That's what happened to various projects around the city where they spend what they have, they get as good as they can get, but they never come back to complete it. So there's options here. Right now, though, we need to establish this urban bike trail. Back in December of 2017, Bike Erie advocated or lobbied PennDOT to put dedicated bike lanes on East 38th Street when they redid that portion. And what PennDOT said is, well, no, we want boulevards to continue like what you have in front of Mercyhurst. So from Pine Ave to McClellan, they wanted to put a boulevard. And they said, once we do that, we lose the width for your dedicated bike lane. So we tried to haggle and weren't successful. So instead they gave us a share road. Well, the boulevards never went in. So we could get like a 5-foot boulevard and still do the dedicated bike lines and everybody would be happy. But again, they have to come back and spend more money. So that's just another example of this. But if the Erie Urban Bike Trail
Adam, your time is up.
happens, okay, just to finish off, it connects 15 parks, 5 country fair stores, 11 schools, and 11 major attractions like the zoo and the JMC Ice Arena. So this is something to liberate the kids so they can bike to where they want to go in a safe bike lane. That's the point. So thank you.
Mr. President, these folks talking are saying good things, but the folks who are really upset basically left because we told them there's going to be a get-together here sometime next week, I guess. I guess what I'm saying is if you folks would come to that meeting and share some information, it might help also. Because it's, we heard one side, the angry side, and then the folks left because they know they're going to be heard again. And then you folks are bringing out other really salient points, but we were hearing it, but the folks who really need to hear it are back home for the most part. I talk too much.
We'll make sure that Bike Erie and some of the other groups get notified of the meeting.
It would have been nice if there were opposing views at the beginning. I didn't know. I've never spoken at a city council meeting before, so I didn't know that you could register for that. So my name's
Let's start
Amanda.
with your name and address, please.
Amanda Gates. It's 1212 West 10th Street. I've served on the board of Bike Erie for 4 years now. My husband and I share one car for our family of 5, and that means that all of us have to commute by bike or on foot a lot of the time. And honestly, biking is my preferred way to go. I don't like to fight with people downtown for parking, and biking is just, it's great, So we do some bike riding for pleasure, but most of our biking is to work, school, doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, etc. Many in our city have a similar situation, and some households are not lucky enough to have a car at all, 19% to be exact. As for the safety concerns, I'm wondering whose safety we are concerned for. Erie lags far behind other modern cities in terms of equitable transportation infrastructure, and people who have to ride bikes have to ride in the streets, and they already are, whether there are bike lanes or not. So don't we want travel that is safe for all citizens? If residents of Green Garden are really concerned about visibility while backing out of driveways, the nice thing about this project is that there will no longer be vehicles parked up and down the street anymore. So if anything, visibility will be increased. Let's also put these safety concerns into perspective. The thing that causes the most accidents and traffic fatalities is the cars. So driving too fast, distracted driving, entitled driving, and narrowing driving lanes and adding bike lanes it will have a calming effect on traffic, and that's something we desperately need. You did hear many of the residents of Green Garden saying that people speed up and down that street. Well, putting in a speed limit sign that says you can only go 25 isn't going to stop people from speeding, but narrowing lanes will. So it makes it safer not just for bicyclists, but for motorists and pedestrians as well. As for the parking, the houses on Green Garden have sizable driveways, and many even have garages. As a taxpayer, I'm excited to see more street space being used for improved transportation access rather than taxpayer-funded free storage for large pieces of personal property. I do understand that on-street parking is needed in some areas of our city, like my street. I only have a parking space for one car in my driveway. I share a driveway. Green Garden is not one of those streets. I think it's a much better use of our money to have travel lanes than to be subsidizing parking for people's get-togethers. I also want to say that I think the news story that aired last week was a little misleading, and I wonder if the residents of Green Garden think that this project is something that it's not. The city isn't installing a bike path. That makes it sound like it's a recreational trail that people in spandex will ride up and down all day for fun, like at the Peninsula. And it's actually a travel lane for another legitimate form of utilitarian transportation. The news also aired segments of residents worrying that their values will go down, when in fact the opposite is true. I support Erie becoming a better place to live, where not everyone has to get in a car every time they leave the house. Even if you can't see it now, this is a quality of life upgrade for all of our citizens. And it isn't just about the residents of one small neighborhood or a vocal minority. Fighting transportation equity is fighting progress. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Molly Brechtel, 820 Cranberry Street. I'd like to recognize Amanda and anyone else that spoke for their first time in front of City Council today. Obviously, this isn't my first time, let alone my first time talking about this issue. But today's the start of Black History Month, and the theme's Black resistance. And it seems appropriate on the day that Tyre Nichols is laid to rest amid nationwide calls for police policy reforms. I'd like to share with Council an email I sent to city decision makers on Sunday, still waiting for a reply, in regards to policies that are not compliant with Department of Justice recommendations. President Biden took legislative action on the second anniversary of George Floyd's death in police custody. This order states, public safety therefore depends on public trust. Public trust in turn requires transparency and accountability. Recent events around the death of Tyre Nichols only make accountability more urgent and necessary. The administration must take immediate action around concerns around the EPD use of force policy and update to include new guidelines from the Department of Justice. We want to ensure the safety of both police officers and those in custody. What are these enhanced guidelines? Mandated first aid. Officers were fired in Memphis under this policy that doesn't exist in the city of Erie. Mandatory reporting. If you see excessive force, you're required to report excessive force. Lethal force limited for escaping suspects. Enhanced, documented, and required training around de-escalation and resisting arrest. President Biden states in his order that strengthening community trust is more critical now, more than ever, and I'd say today, it's even more crucial as communities' cooperation with police to report crimes and insist investigations is essential for deterring violence. Your immediate action would be considered a public safety measure and prevent those in custody not receiving first aid, such as Mr. Nichols. We cannot wait another day. I was in a meeting with Art January 28, 2022, raising these concerns. I raised the updated Department of Justice concerns to City Council and gave a packet of information to the solicitor. I'm disappointed that the administration is talking about body cameras. Yes, we have body cameras, but they didn't save Tyree. Let's be honest. Let's be real. At this point, I don't know what to do. We raise concerns in meetings, via email, public comment. We need change. We need common sense policies. We can't have DEA and FBI officers in this city under an excessive force policy that offers more protection from excessive force to our community members than the Erie Police. I call on any and all decision makers to make this change immediately, and also want to flag it's highly likely the department's in violation of their own policy by not updating these recommendations. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mike Vitale, 2722 Green Garden Boulevard. I've been a resident of Green Garden Boulevard for 30 years, raised 4 children on Green Garden, sent them the Blessed Sacrament on Green Garden, have a huge front porch on Green Garden. Been told I was the mayor of Green Garden at one point in time, way back when the kids were at Blessed Sacrament. I understand Bike Erie's point. I understand our point. I guess, as Mr. Brzezinski said, none of this would have been necessary if we have a boulevard association, we have documents going back to 1950. The mayor spoke at our Boulevard Association luncheon, all right? I've waved to Ed going up Green Garden many times, all right? None of this would be necessary if, in the future, organizations such as this get the people, a stakeholder, the stakeholders involved at the beginning of this. Now, I hope the Green Garden Boulevard Association didn't come up here presenting themselves as being anti-bike, us versus them. This isn't us versus them. It should be all of us. It should have been Bike Erie, it should have been the Boulevard Association sitting down 2 years ago, or whatever Mr. Trott said when all this came about, all right? I think you can understand my frustration, all right? I paid $100 and some thousand in taxes since I've been living on Green Garden. Never sent my kids to a public school, my choice. all right? I've invested in the city, okay? I think the city's awesome, all right? My organization just built a brand new building on 12th and Peach, all right, that I work for, all right? All we're asking for is a seat at the table. And in the future, make sure these seats are offered to people ahead of time. My frustration is, I have a driveway, I have a garage, I also pay $4,500 a year in property tax, all right? I should have at least the option, when necessary, if I have a family function, not to ask my relatives to park at Quickfill or the Blessed Sacrament parking lot and walk up a half a block or a block to my house. I think that all needs to be taken into consideration also. We're not asking for the world, we're asking for input, and we're asking to work with you guys together on this. Thank you.
Good morning. Dave Forrest, Planning Director. I just wanted to offer the services of the Planning Department to facilitate a community meeting between staff and the residents and the biking stakeholders. I think that's a good fit for the Planning Department. I think that's one of the reasons why the Planning Department was created, for just this kind of situation. And so I invite you to use our offices. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Dave.
I'm back. My name is Julie Minnick, and I'm representing myself. What I'd like to talk to you about is the proposed pay raises for you all. Found out about this yesterday, and if you know anything about me, I'm a planner. So I didn't really plan to do this, but I think it's so important that I'm taking time out of my day. My father died a week ago. His funeral memorial service is this Saturday. I should be writing my father's eulogy, but instead, I'm talking to you. I'm going to still write it. I'm just talking to you first. Nobody goes, no, excuse me. Nobody runs for city council for the money. It just doesn't happen. People run because they have an interest, they care about the city, they want power, which is not good or bad, it just is. And they want to be known. I think that's a big reason. The money that you're asking for isn't unreasonable. I know that. But we have so many problems in the city. We have so many problems. Fixable problems. You heard Mark. They need $2.5 million. I'm not saying that by not giving you raises, he's going to get his doors. But it would be a help. This is a good, if you decide to decline the raises, this is a good faith effort for every citizen of Erie County. Because our property taxes may or may not go up, but there's a couple extra fees that you've all let happen, and I understand that. Running a household budget, things go up. My gas went up, and I get that. But I think all of you are in nice suits and probably eat breakfast and are doing quite well. At least I hope that's true. So I don't think an extra $500 is going to matter to you personally. But it does matter to some people. Some people are living on the edge. Now forgive me if any of you are living on the edge. I don't know your personal history, and if I had more time, I would have researched you all. But if taxes go up, you're going to put a strain on people. And secondly, say the baseline is $8,000 for each of you. What can you do for like $50,000? You can hire a police officer to keep the city safe. You can hire firefighters. We always forget about the firefighters, but you can hire a firefighter. Or if you really want to be radical, you could go to the Department of Children and Youth and give 5 social workers a pay raise, because they earn like $20,000, and that's before taxes. That's a starting social worker, by the way. So I asked you to to think wisely. You could do so much with that money. I think all of you are doing well, and you could be like me, buy costume jewelry instead of the real diamonds, and just be a team player. Erie City Council is a representative of all of us. It represents people on the east side, people on the west side, people downtown, people kind of on the suburbs. I live by Erie Plaza, so I'm not a real downtown resident, but I love downtown. I think you should table the pay raises and put that money to better youth. Thank you.
I'll make a comment. The raises won't take effect until the newly elected officials come into effect, so we actually won't benefit. It'll be year 2024 and 2026 that the newly elected officials will be able to have the increase. So it's not for us, it's for the next group of people. Trying to make sure that we're financing and budgeting for it, so that's why it's coming down now. But we will not benefit.
Any other citizens to be heard? Any other citizens to be heard? Any other citizens to be heard? This takes us on to ordinances for first reading.
Council file number 16330, official ordinance. It's not an official ordinance yet. Sponsored by Ms. Flores, seconded by Mr. Troop. An ordinance establishing a compensation schedule for Erie City Council members, repealing any inconsistent ordinances, and providing for the effective date hereof. The current council members receive $6,000 annually, and council president $7,500. The new compensation proposed is as follows: 0 to 12 months service as a council member, $6,000 annually; 12 to 24 months service as a council member, $8,000 annually; 24 to 36 months service as a council member, $10,000 annually; 36 plus months service as a council member, $12,000 annually. The council president shall receive $2,000 a year for service as president. This compensation will be fixed and established as follows, provided the new compensation schedule shall not apply to the current terms of any council member now in office or such member's replacement for the duration of a current term. Sponsored by Ms. Flores, seconded by Mr. Troop. The council file ordinance number 16330, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski?
No.
Ms. Flores? Mr. Keys? Mr. Troop? Mr. Nelson? City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance 16330 by yeas 4, nays 1. Council File number 16331, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $395,769 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received from PennDOT. The funds will be used to carry out the City of Erie APS Intersection Safety Improvements Project through the 2022 Automated Red Light Enforcement, ARLE, funding program. The project includes the installation of 30 accessible pedestrian signal APS buttons at signal intersections that do not currently have APS but will benefit pedestrian safety. Sponsored by Mr. Troop, seconded by Ms. Flores, the Council File Ordinance number 16331, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Nelson. City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance 16331 by yeas 5, nays 0 on first reading. Council File Number 16332, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $1,368,002 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof, gun violence investigation. Sponsored by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Troop. The Council File Ordinance Number 16332, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Nelson. City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance 16332 by yeas 5, nays 0 on first reading.
No old business on the agenda. Moving on to new business.
Motion.
To move the balance of the agenda.
Move the balance of the agenda.
Second.
Without Mel here, we none of us know what to say on that one.
Any separations? Any separations?
Yeah, I'd still separate number 1 under new business. And actually, cancel that.
No separations.
Any separations? Moving the balance of the agenda. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Witherspoon's absent, Mr. Nelson. Balance of the agenda moves 5-0. This would take us to committee reports.
Which is pretty exciting today. A couple of you guys had your committee meetings. So can we go from left to right today? Are you ready? All right, go ahead, Mo.
Well, a little bit last week we had a meeting with the downtown about the public. We had a discussion about open drinking in the city. So that's in discussion right now. I'm supposed to meet with Emily next week to talk more about downtown. So that's my report for today.
I didn't go to that one, but I did see it on Zoom. I like to go with you when we meet with the downtown partnership. I attended the airport meeting. The airport announced that they were going to now have larger planes with additional seating on them coming into the airport. So that's good news. Yesterday, we also met with the city of Mill Creek, unless you want to take that one.
No, that's your committee.
About the 8th Street corridor and how we can make the look and feel of West 8th Street more cohesive and I guess say aesthetically pleasing as it transitions from the city side to the Mill Creek side as it goes into the Prescal Gateway.
Jasmine?
Last Monday, I believe it was, we had a EMTA committee meeting. They are currently accepting feedback for services that they provide to the community. It's a survey that they posted on their Facebook page along with, I believe, their website. It's open to the community up until February 10th. As a citizen notified us, 19% of our community does not have a car, and they do depend on public transportation. As an individual who received her license in January of 2021, I could attest our bus schedules and our bus routes do need to be a little bit more access friendly for people who have regular jobs such as first and second shift. Making sure that they have access home would be great, and some of our third shifts access to the job site would be awesome. So there's still lots of work, but we need the community feedback in order to address these problems and concerns. So if you do want to address some concerns, because your family does depend on the bus schedule, I definitely recommend that you attend some of these public meetings with the EMTA, because there's so much work that can be done, but unless the community is addressing those issues, it's going to be hard for the decision makers to make those decisions. Thank you.
I guess it's my time. Two of my authorities are in flux right now. Mr. Pike is going to be taking over the huge shoes of Casey Wells over at the Convention Authority, and they're in the process of bringing in somebody at the Port Authority. I will try to get those folks here maybe for the next meeting, just to give everybody a visual of the new leadership in those two very, very important authorities. I thank you.
All right, on to mine.
Happy Groundhog Day tomorrow, too. Can't forget that. Groundhog Day.
We've been blessed with our
All right. So I pinch hit on everybody else's committees this last couple weeks. So I was at those various meetings and really enjoyed the conversation. That's like our first actual, I think, ever downtown committee meeting called together, and the planning department had a lot of input on that, putting it together. And I think we'd done one before for economic development. So this is pretty exciting. We're in the process of the appointment, which has been a ridiculous amount of my time these last couple weeks, getting to chat with all the applicants. The process, we had 20 applicants, and we'd asked everyone on city council for as many as 5 names that they would like to have interviewed moving forward. And those interviews will be conducted on February 9th at 5:30. The deadline for council members to do that was today. Everybody contributed those names. There was a lot of overlap to narrow the list down to 10 names. And they get to fill that empty seat right next there to Mo, who apparently today nobody wants to sit by. I've been trying to figure out if I should have put something there in remembrance of Liz after resignation, like a newspaper or a cutout, or she's a big baseball fan, like a little ball.
He's such a bright light that he stands out.
A pile of books.
Yeah, a pile of books. Anyways, we narrowed the list down to 10. The people that we'll be interviewing on the 9th are Taiwan Taylor, Julie Minnick, Abdullah Kasim, Armand Rocco, Robert Mart, Susanna Faulkner, John Voley, Sherry Gross, Kathleen Schaff, and Roland Slade. I'm really excited about the level of professionalism that we have in this list, the education, the experience that they all bring. This should be a very, I anticipate the seat being well filled. But that's been an ongoing process. We'll be having those interviews on the 9th at 5:30, and at the end of that night, all current 6 members of City Council will list their 6 choices in order with a full ballot, and that'll be on a weighted scale, and the person with the most points at the end of that night will be our new coworker. I have no idea who it's going to be. I'm excited to find out. For the next 10 months. And then there's obviously elections coming up for the rest of that seat. Otherwise, solicitor meetings, department meetings, and the usual work of presidency. I had an op-ed in the paper on Sunday with something that I hope that we have some consideration of in the next couple months regarding an economic and housing stimulation for our community that was passed back in 1990, but never implemented. So, anyways, that is it for my committee report. We do not have anyone from the Treasurer Controller's Office here today. Do we have anything from the solicitor?
I don't have anything.
And from Renee.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be quick. You had an opportunity to meet our new Director of Communications and Caucus, but I just wanted to introduce Chris Millette. And we did send out a news release yesterday. We welcome Chris to the city. He has vast experience in communications.
Did he send out his own news release?
He did. That was that was his first assignment.
Hopefully the last time I will need to talk about myself officially.
Want to remind everybody that the public comment is open for the input on the bikeways through February 3rd, in addition to the meeting that's going to happen next week. And I just want to reiterate, what Public Works conveyed during the caucus is that this is part of the public input process. We reached out asking for public input. It's not a done deal, so we look forward to hearing from residents. Next week, we will begin interviews of the CDBG applicants, so you'll be receiving the schedule from Deb Smith. If two council members want to attend those interviews, you're welcome to do that. The applications were due at the end of January 27th, and so interviews will start next week of all of the applicants. We continue to meet with our group on homelessness that's looking at we have a consultant. We're meeting with all of our community partners. I won't go into detail on it right now, but we're nearing the conclusion of the recommendations, which will be to leverage the $2.9 million in home ARP funding that we have to create more permanent supportive housing units than we can do on our own. We also are kicking off our Bloomberg data track project later this week. This week is Black History Month, and so we will be showcasing residents who've made an impact on our community throughout the month of February. And then finally, I just wanted to let council know, and we'll be getting out an announcement about this, but the City of Erie was awarded some congressional appropriations funding, which has never happened before. And so in working with the Erie County Redevelopment Authority, we're going to be getting another $3 million toward the EMI project. And then we will also be getting about $1.14 million thanks to Senator Casey and Congressman Kelly. And that funding will be $325,000 for a bomb squad regional response vehicle, which is sorely needed. If you saw what they go to their calls in, you would be mortified. Another $319,000 for police equipment and tactical gear, which will help with the fact that we have a lot of funding in the capital improvement plan, a lot of needs, so that will help greatly with that. And then $500,000 for the PAL program. So we're very excited about those. The next stage now is that we need to apply to the actual agency that awards the funding, but it was approved through congressional appropriations. So that's all I have for today.
Ms. Lemus, how much did we get for stormwater?
We didn't apply for congressional appropriations for stormwater.
We got some stormwater money from the federal government, though.
We got, are you talking about the Penvest loan? There was a Penvest loan that was approved, but we're not going to take the loan. We were hoping for grants. No. But we are meeting with Penvest to look into how we can be more successful at getting grant funding in the future. There was state funding that we got. We got about $400,000 in state funding for two stormwater projects.
That's okay.
Okay.
Anything else? We good with it? All right. City Council meeting adjourned.
City Council adjourns at 10:52 a.m. Mr. Nelson, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Flores, Mr. Keys, Mr. Troop.